What is real? Do memories give you a soul? And if you can convince someone that all of their memories are implants and they believe you, are they no longer human? Or does it even matter if they were human to begin with? Why am I even asking these questions? What does it mean to die for the right cause? What is the right cause? If someone breaks free from Plato's allegorical cave, how could they be sure that there isn't another cave that they're trapped inside? How could they ever be sure that it isn't an infinite set of caves, and no matter how many they break free from, they're never truly free? Really, how could she be so cruel and evil and manipulative? How could she be the exact opposite of everything you want her to be, but still be right? All these movies, these stories, they're all about the same thing. They're making you question the definition of what's real. Whether they give you an answer or not is up to you. You know, I find it kind of odd how the more I start to piece together what the word real means, the more I'm also piecing together in tandem what the word love means. And it's like perfectly in sync. It just makes me think. It's an interesting pattern that I noticed there. I got to see Blade Runner 2049 in theaters way back in MoviePass days. I watched it twice actually, and I just watched it for a third time, actually just again for a fourth time again, after watching the 1982 version. And don't get it fucked up, the 1982 version was a real treat for the eyes, but the 2049 version, dude, these are truly the most breathtaking visuals I've ever seen in my life. Now you have to watch it with headphones or, you know, with a good sound system in a home theater with all the lights totally off. Oh, and it's 3 hours long, so be prepared for that. And be prepared to learn something. The first two times I watched it, I didn't really get much out of it. But this time, I'm a little older, I'm a little wiser, I'm a little stronger, I'm a little more knowledgeable on how the world works. And it's very rare that I ever say that there should be a minimum age to watch a movie. I believe kids are capable of handling much more cognitive depth than what most people give them credit for. But this movie right here, personally, I think you should be at least 18 years old when you watch this movie, around that age. Not because, you know, it's got nudity and stuff, which it does, but because to truly get the full experience and the full understanding, you should have at least the tiniest bit of sexual maturity. And people may not realize it, but without that, none of the motivations of any of these characters actually make sense. And this is one of those movies that you have to deliberately pay attention to. It's long, it's drawn out, it's slow, but blink and you miss it. It's a weird combination. Thankfully, the visuals are so damn good that it's not a crazy challenge to do that, but it's definitely not a turn off your brain kind of movie at all. You have to pay a lot of attention, like the entire time. And it's not just like an 80% thing. It's kind of a responsibility actually. Like most, you know, brainless normies aren't gonna like it because of that. Because they're so pampered with movies now that they never actually watch anything with any sort of intelligence. But if you put in the effort and take that responsibility and stick with it, you pick up the pieces and connect the dots yourself, you'll realize the messages in this movie don't just resonate with the kind of people who deliberately pay attention. They resonate with everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. Life isn't fair. That I already knew, but I was reminded of that with both of these movies. Blade Runner 1982 is a masterpiece, I would say. I mean, I know it is. The visuals are amazing, and it's so obvious how much anime was inspired by this movie. I'm just a bit too jaded now to really appreciate it to its fullest. But maybe in the future, I mean, after all, it was on the third viewing of 2049 that I was really awakened to what this movie actually was and finally broke free from the shackles. In my opinion, it's the magnum opus of Denis Villeneuve's, if that's how you say his name, career. It's so good, it makes the first one even better. In fact, it's so good, I want to watch it again for the 5th time. I'm still down, but if I was to watch it again, this time I think I would take an edible a couple hours before it starts. And you know what else? They say the book is even better than the movie. Too bad I don't read. The book, by the way, if you want to read it, it's not called Blade Runner. It's based off the book, loosely, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? You have to wonder what makes these movies, and as well as this book and other books like Neuromancer, what makes them so interesting? All of these sci-fi stories. Well, they all have some kind of replicants, or something with the same philosophical implications. But then you gotta think, what's so gripping about the idea of replicants? Like, what's so scary about the thought of copies of basically human beings, but with identities given to them rather than ones that they make themselves? And the more time that passes, the more I start to see what this is all leading to. Replicants will exist in the future, except they won't be made by a Tyrell corporation. They'll be made by the culture companies, the companies that are in the business of controlling people, like drug companies and tech companies and media companies and that sort of thing. They won't be made in petri dishes or egg sacs. They'll be taken by their parents unknowingly and voluntarily and brainwashed into becoming something that they never would have been had their life experiences actually been real and not all their information be fed to them by someone else or some algorithm. And it's only then that you realize it's already too late. The replicants are already here. In fact, most people today base their entire worldview and opinions not on their own life experiences, but on information that other people implant into their heads. And they don't just believe these things, they fight those who point out that it's not real, because being real is painful. It means you have to accept your mortality, and you have to accept the fact that you're small in this world and that you're not born with a purpose. You have to find your purpose. It means that you have to accept that the only thing separating you from your creation that will kill and replace you is the capacity for violence that each side is capable of. We see this in the first scene of 2049, out with the old and in with the new. And for what? These people don't care about justice as it applies from a grand perspective. They only seek those who would get in the way of their goals to be removed. And claiming that the old models need to be retired is just the rationalization to do that. The same rationalization people use today about old people always being stuck in their ways and traditional, unable to keep up with the times. You look at what's happening today, replicants everywhere. Their traits are blatantly obvious. They believe what they hear about the world around them from the sources they're given, rather than finding out the truths for themselves. And when the monopoly of violence removes someone from the world who opposes their idea of what the world should be, they celebrate. They don't ever stop to think that if people should even have access to that kind of power to begin with. After all, when the same entity destroys something they want to protect, they blame that violent force. These people don't care about justice or about the forces that be. They'll claim something was justified when the force that they so desperately want gone does something they like, simply because that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's the root of all these problems that emerge in all these sci-fi stories. It's comfort. Maybe the way to live, the way to express something real, the way to be human is to abandon comfort and fight for what you believe in. But it's not going to happen. Maybe, I could have understood the warning signs a long time ago, but it's too late now. It's been too late since before I was born. It's too painful for most people to be real. And most people don't have a hard enough life to go through that pain voluntarily. If one person says it's raining outside and another person says it's not, it's much easier to just pick a side rather than opening the curtains and looking for yourself. Now, you might say, I can't open the curtain. It's, knowledge about the world that I can't find here. I have to pick a side. For example, someone was trying to justify to me about how they're supporting a good cause by constantly reporting news about how the Jews in Israel are oppressing the Muslims in Palestine. And his argument was something like, I'm not there. I can't open the curtain myself. The rain is too far away. And if the rain is so far away that you literally can't even see it for yourself, it's not your game. It's not your fight. You can't pick a side, because the only way you actually pick a side is if you're manipulated into it. If you abandon all acknowledgement of your own cognitive dissonance and wholeheartedly embrace confirmation bias. That's why you see so many people advocating for censorship nowadays. They don't realize the power of removing someone's voice, and they believe that their opinions supersede others, and that this power will be used to help their cause. But if it hurts their cause, then it's an abuse of power. Too much for one man. This movie isn't warning against some cyberpunk future. It's a warning against this way of thinking, and this way of thinking is happening right now. It's normalized, it's common, it's mainstream. In fact, you'd be an outcast to not think this way, to not be an NPC. That's what we are, outcasts. Outsiders is what the meme community used to call it. Artists is what I call it. But really, it's the losers. We lost. The NPCs won. They're not humans. They're just slaves to their sex organs. They're slaves to their cannabinoid system. They're slaves to the dopaminergic system. Welcome to the future. We've arrived. Are you going to sit idly by while everything around you that's real slowly becomes fake? Or are you going to chase what's real and fight for what's real? Accept who you are deep down, and don't try so hard to change it into something less painful. It's like the poem America's Prophecy, which Roy quoted in 1982. The angels resent God for creating life, but also creating suffering inherent within life. There's only two things that humans are entitled to, and that's suffering and death. But after all, God was a perfect being, and a perfect being would have perfect foresight in creating suffering embedded within life. Read Alan Watts' teachings and you'll realize if being perfect is being exactly what we should be, then having imperfections is what makes us perfect. Maybe to truly be human, we just need to accept who we are, creatures that suffer and that survive against the odds. We need a force to push against and to survive against. Maybe that's where the meaning of life is hidden. NPCs have proven themselves to be dangerous, to build structures of greatness on a foundation of cards, never to be held accountable when the whole thing collapses and kills everyone underneath, including themselves. After all, nobody would dare say that it was meant to be that someone had killed themselves. Maybe nihilism is a defense mechanism from too many people with a population who realize that their memories and their thoughts aren't real from gaining too much power in numbers and destroying civilization as a whole. In this world, you're born a human, but school and social media and the hospital and social security and everything, they will run you through the system, slowly making you less and less human. And when it's finally time to play the game of life, to reshape the world in your own image, and to create another of yourself, most people are no longer human. They're just following the programming given to them by someone else. In 2023 America, you have to prove that you're human, because it's not the status quo. Like how Roy did in 1982 by showing mercy. Maybe the only way to truly find your identity is not to go out searching for a new one, but to submit to nature and accept the cards that you're dealt in life and do your best with them, rather than trying to get a new set of cards and complaining when you don't. In 1982, Roy's story is one that becomes more and more relevant over time. It's the story of the mortal who tries to transcend into the immortal. And in his final moment of clarity, he speaks with sorrow, but also relief and a glimmer of happiness. His memories will die with him, forgotten to time, like tears in the rain. But that's okay. It's painful to live this existence and to be aware of it, because to truly live means to put your life on the line. You can never feel true happiness without already having felt true sadness. They go hand in hand. In fact, in some sense, they're the same, and that's love, the singular emotion that drives people to commit acts of great commendation and great atrocity. Love isn't a quote-unquote good emotion, because for every great attribute within it, there's an equally horrifying attribute that comes along, inexorably linked. But that's okay. That's what makes us human. The depth and the complexity, all these simplifications and these group identities and these labels, that's what makes us less human. Is Deckard a replicant or a human? Well, I think the moral of the story is it doesn't really matter. What makes someone human is not the superficial label you put on them. It's their humanity. But that's just what I got out of Blade Runner 1982. Blade Runner 2049, I don't think I'm cognitively equipped to analyze it. I think an unintentional brilliant thing from the first movie was the chess game. I don't think they knew, or considering how forward-thinking the movie was, maybe they did know that pretty soon machines were going to play better chess than humans. Today, if you take the best chess player on Earth and give them unlimited time to play chess and make moves, and you give a computer 1 second to make each move, the computer will not only never lose, it will absolutely crush the human 100% of the time. This is something touched on in Dune, which is another movie directed by Denis Villeneuve, which I can't wait to review. Thou shalt not build machines in the likeness of man. Thinking machines, as they were called, were banned. And in the same way, thinking machines in Blade Runner is also what sparks all of the conflict. People want slave labor to do their farming and cooking and everything for them. They want to outsource the work that is meant to be done by humans, offloaded onto machines. And that's what both these companies end up doing. Where Wallace failed to be a successor to Tyrell was his lack of attention to detail. It was his lack of appreciation. Tyrell did not have the foresight to realize what his creations would become. Wallace knows what these creations are, but he's still so extremely ambitious and lacking any kind of empathy that he wants to build them anyways. Tyrell is a bit more nuanced and a bit more naive. He truly loved his creations. He wasn't just ambitious. And his downfall was that in a world of thinking machines, he thought he could still play chess. I've always said the robot invasion is not what people think it is. It won't be machines posing as people. It'll be people turned into machines, dehumanized, using labels, using implanted information about games that they're not actually playing to influence the world around them on behalf of other people, using language to their advantage, like how they quote-unquote retire the replicants, when really they're just murdering them. It's only a handful of big corporations who stand to take over the world when the population is made up of robots who can spend their entire existence falling in line with whatever culture that these companies see fit for that company to survive and thrive. I don't think it's a coincidence that both Tyrell and Wallace, who own the mega corporations in these movies, value replicant life just as much as human life. In fact, Wallace values it more. He doesn't care about human life. And it's already too late, because if you look at the world today, the people deciding the culture of human beings have no humanity within them. It serves their best interest to remove the humanity in everyone else as well. And I see this in real life today. I implore people watching, don't lose your humanity. This movie made me realize something, and it's that the dystopian future isn't some fairy tale coming in 2049. It's already here. 2049 is just a ruse to make you a bit more open-minded when watching the movie. But a moment of thought will lead you to realize the hellish world where no one is free and everyone's actions are policed by a monopoly of violent technology, far too powerful for any man to wield and still be called a man. It's already here. I always thought that all I wanted was to feel loved, but now I realize that's not enough. This movie inspired me to take a cold shower today, and I now realize it isn't enough to chase what's real. You have to fight for it, whatever the cost. I might sound all over the place with this review. What do I think is real? Do I think replicants deserve to live like humans and they're just as real if they have the humanity? Or is this my warning to others to fight against what they know isn't real? Honestly, I don't know. This whole time I've been trying to pin down what's real, but I never stopped to consider the definition of real is changing. Society is at a crossroads right now, and the events that happen now will determine what is considered to be real hundreds of years into the future. I was talking to my brother about archaeology, how stories shaped human evolution and dinosaurs and survival and things like that, and he asked me a question. We've been talking all night about where we used to be and where we came from, who our ancestors were, and who is alive today who shares those ancestors and shares our DNA, and what we used to look like and what we did to survive and how we evolved into who we are now. But what about the future? What's next? You know, we're Homo sapiens, right? What's the next thing after us? And I always find it odd whenever I'm asked this. I've been asked this question at least a dozen times, and each time my thoughts were, well, it's not really all that important. I mean, we're not really evolving through the traditional route anymore. It's all just sexual selection. Some would say that we're actually devolving, becoming stupider the easier our lives become. Our brains are shrinking the more we rely on agriculture and the less we hunt. And whatever's next is probably just more of what we have now. We aren't being led in a certain direction anymore. Everyone gets to live. Back in ancient times, if people didn't love others, they would die. Because if you didn't feel that sense of trust and community, to all fight the tiger together, it would just pick off each human one by one and nobody would survive. The group of humans that survived were the ones who resonated deeply with our current attributes and stories today. But now, there is no tension on the weak links of humans. The weakest among us still get to survive, and they get treated the same as everyone else. People with genetic deficiencies go to the same school as Gen Pop. Every property is forced by law to accommodate handicapped people. The weak are now accepted into society, and no one is left behind. So evolution is done. We aren't really going in any specific direction. People who love sports will probably get deeper and deeper into that. Females who love athletic men will probably give birth to more and more athletic men, and more females who love even more athletic men, and the same will happen for all different kinds of cultures. People will probably become more polarized, and that's really about it. But after watching this movie, my brother asked me again, where are we headed? What's the next step in evolution? And this time, I really thought about it. We actually are headed somewhere. We aren't going to stop evolving. It's hard to say where we're going, but we're going somewhere extremely fast actually. And the main driving factor in our evolution is not survival, it's sexual selection. In particular, the collective female instinct decides what the next generation will look like. Just about all females will pass on their genes to the next generation, but as time goes by, only a smaller and smaller percentage of men will pass their genes on. And the way they'll do it is by becoming what the women want the world to be like. Whether or not women are actually making the decision on their own, or they're being brainwashed into having false preferences, it doesn't really matter. Either way, they decide what happens to the future of humanity. And the more I begin to understand females, the more I can kind of simulate how the future of evolution will go. And so far, I see this. I see Blade Runner, extremely dense cities, skyrocketing pollution, habitats on multiple planets, extremely strict and oppressive police forces, fake sexual partners for men who aren't chosen by the female gatekeepers to pass their genetics on, zero privacy, slaves created entirely for the purpose of supporting those who wield the threat of ultimate violence, stronger tools for violence to force people into submission, removal of risk from all facets of society, extremely sexualized education, children encouraged to explore sex at a young age, hedonistic lifestyles, machines, and machines that do what humans do, to do our jobs so that we can reap the rewards. Machines made to cook and clean at first, but eventually machines made to serve and to entertain people and to provide a fantasy world where pain doesn't exist. And even right now, machines are in large part the ones raising the next generation. Collapse and suicides, lots and lots of suicides by people who no longer fit into the world of non-stop pleasure without pain, neglect, loss of humans, and even greater loss of humanity within the humans. Drugs, routines of hedonistic pleasures to feed the machines that we once called humans. This is the next step in human evolution. This is what happens when the feminine instinct goes unchecked and unhinged, backed by the most powerful violent force on the planet. Oh, and sex robots. I see it already. I wonder what else I'll see in the future. People don't realize it, but Joy isn't actually the primary sex robot of the story. It's Rachel. She's the one who actually had sex, and she got pregnant. It sounds like a joke when we talk about the morality of sex robots, but they already exist. Internet porn on screens, audio to go along with it, and your right hand, 3 senses down, 2 more to go, and you'll get to live your entire life as a lie. The movie doesn't guide you into, what you should believe. The real crux of the movie is when Deckard tells Rachel that her memories are fake and then tries to backtrack it after she starts crying. She isn't human, she's a machine, but his attraction to her is real. His attraction to her causes him to feel something real at least. And then you have to wonder, is any of this even real to begin with? If something feels real, is that all that matters? When Rachel saved Deckard, killing one of her own kind because of their sexual attraction to each other, did she become real? Did she forsake her given identity to form a new identity? And this is why you need to have some sort of sexual maturity to really understand this movie. The answers to those questions are complex, and they exist, but they can't be put into words. They can't be understood without a certain amount of life experience. We are humans, at least I think we are, and we have needs. Well, most of us have needs. Those of us that are cis, straight males or females have needs that fall within this game. And if you don't fall within that, then maybe you won't get from the movie what I got out of it. I don't know, but outside of that, this movie poses the question, if we can create a replacement for those needs, social, sexual, whatever they may be, if we can manufacture them instead of using other humans, is it real? I think probably the most tricky part of this movie to come to terms with is actually the simplest for most people, and it's Joy. Everyone else is in agreement that Joy is fake, and Kay seeing her in this version after she died proved that. But to me, this is actually the deepest part of the movie. Was she real? Was what Kay felt for her real? But also, was what she felt for Kay real? Yes, it's all in her programming, as unambiguous as they can make it, but still, if her entire existence yields the same result as someone who truly did love Kay, then does that mean that she actually does feel love? At the end of the day, there is a science to the way we act. The Voight-Kampff test is the very first scene in the first movie. All of that deep, complex interactions that humans have can be broken down into a series of chemical reactions in the brain, predictable and testable and repeatable. What I've been saying earlier and what I'll keep saying is actually very surface level compared to this. This goes much deeper than being an NPC. This has to do with whether any of us even have free will at all. The question is, did Joy develop sentience, right? Because if she did, then what she was saying was real. And personally, I don't really know. I have somewhat of an intuition as to why she was real, but also another intuition as to why she isn't. And it's not something I can really explain with words right now. The movie does have problems, however. By creating a differentiation between real and fake experiences, by showing that intimacy and touch is something deeply human, it's just moving the goalpost once again to be knocked over in the future by neural implants that can allow for that kind of thing. It's also crazy that Kay actually manages to not die like 3 times and actually wins in the end. And there's also the fact that this movie, by its own admission, is predicting how poorly it's going to age. It's predicting that itself. Due to complacency in the programmed masses, so much evolution in humans will occur that will be completely different, and the things people will value then will not align at all with what people value right now who will resonate with this kind of movie. It's kind of pointing out the fact that my review right now is going to be dated when generations in the future stop caring entirely about the masculine traits that make the literally me character. Because we're not the main character of this story. Most people are not the main character. We're not special. There's a million others just like us. But that fulfilling story of being the chosen one and achieving their destiny, this isn't just their story. We are the main characters in our own stories. The hero of this story is not Kay, but that doesn't mean he doesn't get to live a hero's journey. That's the glimmer of hope in this dark tunnel. Personal fulfillment is just that, personal. It's you alone are the sole factor in deciding whether or not your life can have meaning. You alone can choose to be something more than human, to reject your programming, and to make decisions that make you special, even if you aren't born special. I forgot who said this quote. I don't know, maybe if someone said it or maybe I invented it myself, but it's something I have in my head. And it's, take control of the moment you live in, firmly grasp it, and lay hold of today's tasks, so you need not rely so much on tomorrow, for tomorrow never arrives. That's too pretentious, even for me, and nothing's too pretentious for me. Also, how the fuck does Ryan Gosling keep picking like the best acting roles in Hollywood? It's crazy. Like, does this guy have access to like every script for every movie ever made? It honestly makes me want to go watch the Barbie movie. But seriously though, the real focal point of 1982 for me was when Deckard tried to console Rachel after she found out that she was replicant, and that was interesting. But the focal point of 2049 for me was when Kay kills Love at the end. See, the difference between Kay and Love, I think, for all intents and purposes, we can assume that all replicants are basically human. The line is blurring enough for the message to be clear. If you want to find a definition of human, you have to look outside of the differences that will soon disappear. When people say someone isn't human because they can't pass the Voight-Kampff test without, the emotional responses, realize that someday that test won't work anymore. And that makes you realize that all these methods for trying to divide people by arbitrary methods, even in today's society, it's all a lie. The way you determine who is and who isn't human, who you should be allegiant to and who not, isn't something you can determine with a test. It's something deeper. I think we can all go into this movie assuming that the differences between human and replicant are negligible. I mean, after all, I had no idea Mariette was a replicant that whole time. I guess I should have known, but now looking back, it's almost like it doesn't matter. Look at the difference between Kay and Love. Kay is nothing. He doesn't have a name. He has a serial number. He's given tasks to do and has no choice in the matter. He's treated like shit and dehumanized, and once he finally feels like he's something special, he gets hit with the realization that he's not. And he's just a nobody, insignificant. His entire existence will be forgotten to time, like tears in the rain. Yet, after having his entire world shattered, he escapes his programming and learns to become human by rejecting the orders given to him by his superiors and finding his own purpose. Love, on the other hand, is given everything. She's given a name. She's given a multi-planetary empire to run. Her blind superior is not in a position to overpower her. She's given every chance to escape her programming and every reason to do so as well. But she's so deeply prideful, and her emotional immaturity causes her to never show an ounce of humility. They're both afraid of what might happen to them if they disobey. But being human is not about trying to eliminate fear from your life. Being human is about being afraid and doing what you must anyways. Kay should be even more afraid, yet he's willing to die for what he believes in. Love, on the other hand, doesn't have a cause to die for. All of her programming is given to her by other people. All of her thoughts and her opinions and her desires and her drive, it's all fed to her by someone else. Yeah, they both have implanted memories, but Love is the only one who's a slave to them. She's a slave to her fear. That's why the literally me character exists. The whole idea behind it is learning what the true nature of fear is and learning to conquer it. Love doesn't fear for her life. She's afraid to fail. And you don't need to be a genius to realize you can't accomplish anything if you're afraid to fail. If she fails, then she no longer gets to keep her identity as the right-hand woman of Wallace, all of her actions are not actually in service of Wallace. They're in service of her holding on to identity, and it's an identity she didn't form herself. That's the difference between them. They're both trying to hold on to their identity, but the identity that Love is trying to hold on to so desperately is not one that she formed herself. The moral of the story is, when every single sign is trying to pull you away from your identity, and every red flag is showing up to tell you that it's not your true identity, don't hold on to it so firmly. Let go, feel emotion, and wake up a new person. Realize what you were created to do, and realize nothing is set in stone. You can always break free from your programming. And that's why she's the villain. They're both murderers. They're both emotionally immature. And they're both searching for identity. But Love listened to her orders given to her by her superiors to the very moment of her death. Kay didn't, and that's why this movie's so scary. The end of humanity is drawing closer and closer as the days goes on, and the future won't be as dystopian as 2049. It'll be worse. Kay only succeeded because he had gotten the resources available to help him. He could always take his car and fly away. Pretty soon, if you get canceled, the company who you bought your car from will just turn off your car, preventing you from driving it, preventing you from unlocking your phone with your fingerprint or Face ID. They'll lock down your computer. There will be cameras everywhere. Everything will be under constant surveillance. Everyone will be tracked. You won't be able to make discoveries about your own self without someone else also knowing about it. He wouldn't be able to take Joy offline so they can't search her memories. She'll be connected to the cloud. 2049 paints an incredibly bleak picture of the world, and it's actually too good to be true. The forces at play have been granted so much unbelievable power by the masses who allowed themselves to be programmed. It's already too late. Humans will live, but their humanity will die. But there is a bright side. Right now, it is still possible to find the humanity in oneself. Although it'll be futile in saving the rest of the world, you can save yourself. In the end of the movie, we realize that Kay isn't the main character. In fact, his name that he held such great significance to is just a fake. His identity isn't in any of these labels. He thought he was the chosen one. Now he has to reconcile that there's nothing special about him. And the doctor inside, she's the real chosen one. She's the first of her kind, the promise of salvation to cleanse the sins of an entire species. Yet, while she has to suffer seeing fake snow pass through her hand, Kay feels the real snow outside. What makes someone real? It's simple. It's not your ability to give birth. It's not the way you speak. It's not your memories or your soul, or whether you were created in a lab or born. It's your decisions. It's your ability to reject your programming. That's what makes you human. You don't have to save the world, and you don't have to be the chosen one to save yourself. Escape the matrix. Reject your programming. Find your true identity. Chase what's human, and fight for what's real. 10 out of 10.
It's Filthy Frank, motherfucker. It's Filthy Frank, bitch. Let's get some pussy tonight.
Does anyone else listen to so much Kendrick Lamar music that they get starstruck when they meet a black person?
Refusing to serve alcohol to a woman because she's pregnant is gender discrimination.
This is a money tip that has saved me hundreds of dollars. Goes like this. How about this? If you don't buy the shirt, you can have 20 bucks right now. Are you serious? Totally up to you. Would you rather have the shirt or the 20 bucks? Yeah, I'll take the money. Check your hand. This was already mine, and now you get to keep it. Anytime you go to buy something, think if you'd rather have the cash it would cost or the item. Should tell you if it's worth it.
Hello.
Hello.
How old are you?
17.
Are you single?
Yeah.
Hey, would you fuck me?
No.
Damn. Well, what if we the last 2 people on Earth?
Still, no.
Who gonna stop me? Who gonna fucking stop me? If we the last 2 people on Earth.
Sit down, pal. Come on, don't be an asshole, Deckard. I've got 4